Punishment used to work, now it stopped. They escalate, you escalate, and nothing works to bring order and cooperation to your home. You're not failing. The tool stopped working, and God actually gave a winning design. In 2011, I found myself a single mom with 4 kids between the ages of 6 and 12, all suffering with mental health disorders. My youngest son, ADHD, and the most severe case of oppositional defiant disorder the school psychologist had ever seen.
Now, I've had the privilege and honor of working with thousands of kids in my after-school martial art program. And so what I found when they usually come as labeled ODD or any of these labels is that they were looking for self-control, rather than being shoved back into a box or having somebody else in control of their body and their actions.
Yeah, and let me pre-frame with that, because every parenting book, every psychologist, every therapist, church, teacher, everywhere you go for years has taught parents that we need to correct their behavior in the moment. It comes from a doctrine that was written by St. Augustine in the 4th century that talked about the original sin, that children are born defiant and need to be disciplined into compliance. But what Tom has found and what he's taught me, and I've literally seen thousands of children myself transform when we guide their behavior versus any type of punishment. I'm so grateful that you came in my life and you taught me about this, Tom, because as soon as I started guiding behavior versus the punishment, my children started to transform. What most parents do and why it makes the behavior worse is we implement harsher punishment, longer grounding, more takeaways, and the child just pushes back because, as Tom just said, they are not wanting to be controlled by you. And don't get me wrong, there's no judgment here. I fell into the same trap, which is why my kids were all being diagnosed as well.
But when you can switch things around and be proactive with what the missing life skill is for them to have self-control versus you always in control, everything that goes on the positive side of the spectrum shows up whether you like it or not.
Did you know that spare the rod, spoil the child isn't even in the Bible? Not one word of it. It does say in Proverbs that if you spare the rod, you hate your child. And what I have found out in Psalm 23, the prayer of King David said, "You are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort and protect me." Ephesians 6:4 says, "Do not provoke your children to anger." And this is Apostle Paul talking about the pushback of ODD 2,000 years before the DSM even existed.
Now in Proverbs 22:6, it clearly states, train them up in his design, not against it. But what does his design really mean? What if it could be this simple? And it's sitting right there. You see, this thumbprint is in his design, his uniqueness, because no two thumbprints match. And when we can understand that there's a razor's edge difference of allowing them to be a little genius, embracing their own uniqueness versus conformity, well, that's the difference between smiles and frowns.
What the medical system has labeled oppositional defiant disorder, God's design labels strong-willed kids as an untrained, unique child of God. And when I started to learn this and I started to think, have I shown my kids how to sit properly in a chair before I started to correct their behavior? And the answer was no. Have I ever taught my child how to make their own juice, pour their own juice, serve their own food? And the answer was no. I did everything for my children, and I realized that they were just saying, when do I get a turn? When can I have a say? And the first time that you were ever at my house and I was all like, "Hey, Zach, it's almost time for bed." And you knew he needed to embrace his own uniqueness.
Yes.
What did you do that changed everything?
Well, I asked him a couple quick questions like, "Hey, Zach." Well, what I knew is that Mom always read him a bedtime story. So I just started off with, "Hey, Zach, would you like to go to bed now with that story or in 10 minutes from now without the story?" And he chose 10 minutes without the story. Now, the second part that was very key is nobody ever showed him what 10 minutes on the clock is. Now, that might be hard to comprehend because it's kind of like common sense in the bigger kid world, better known as adults. But when I took the time to show him a missing life skill, you know, the big hands here, and when it gets from there to there, that's what 10 minutes looks like. Oh, and then for the first time in his life, he goes, I can now understand what this all thing is.
So one thing that you can do differently today is you can start asking questions. You see, Jesus always asked questions. He didn't command people into transforming. He didn't even command people to follow him. He invited them into the journey.
So instead of yelling, stop it, or you're going to lose this, do this instead. When this happens, this can show up. And what we mean by this is the child clicks. Oh, there's the secret to the puzzle to solve. When I do this, I can make this show up. And that's the razor's edge difference.
You see, a defiant child can't fight it when you're asking them questions that give them autonomy, that gives them agency over their own lives, and agency over their own lives stops rebellion in its tracks. Genesis chapter 1:27 says that we were all created in the image of God, which means you and your child was also created in the image of God. So when you look at them today, just see this little reflection of God, see a little genius who's looking to embrace their own uniqueness, do what you can to give them autonomy and agency over their own lives, and you'll see brand new results. The pushback, the strong will, well, they're not flaws. They're God's perfect design. And all we have to do is learn to empower that design versus coming in and punishing it.
So the next time your child comes up to you and they are asking you through whatever you see as bad behavior, what if they were just asking this question instead? Mom, Dad, can I be like you? Can I do like you? Can I do like you one day all by myself without you?
Yeah.
And when you can see that that's their way of approaching you versus what you think is wrong or off the mark or not the right timing, then that could be the difference between heaven and hell right here in your home.
What's one punishment that used to work for you that suddenly stopped? If you got anything from this episode, subscribe to our channel. And if you want more, you can click right over here. Until we meet again,
Here's to our parenting success. Cheers, everyone.
Bye for now.